Right. Welcome, everybody, to our part two on scientific collaboration. A couple of days ago, we had part one, which was part of the HAPS takeover. And we went into like sort of specific examples on collaborations between very different fields in science. But some of us were thinking and talking afterwards that there was some sort of things that weren't addressed in that first episode, and we had a lot of follow up ideas from it. But before we get too much into that, maybe everyone could go around and like introduce themselves really quickly and just like your name and what you do and where you are. I guess I can start. My name is Georgia Auteri. I'm a PhD student, and I'm a wildlife biologist. I study bats most specifically. I'm at University of Michigan and located here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with my housemate, Isa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isa. I am an entomologist, but macro photographer as well. And I do a live broadcast on bugs. And yeah, I don't know. That's the gist of me.
David?
Yes, I'm David Dunn. I teach astronomy at a community college here near Sacramento. And back in my day, I used to do papers and so forth, but now it's all about teaching. So,
yeah, hi, and I'm Christian Sasser. I'm the astronomer in charge for an organization called iTelescope in Australia, based in Australia, which is a lot of fun. And I spend most of my other time out in the wild with wildlife biologists, actually, because I like the multidisciplinary approach, and I do a lot of live broadcasts too. Thank you.
Yeah, and we just invited one more person who was with us on the original HAPS takeover. We'll see if he joins. Give him a second here.
Yeah.
Abyss, you're invited if you want to come. That's very in the spirit of collaboration. You're invited. That's the unofficial tagline. So I guess we can start off with so maybe we could
one thing that George and I were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, one thing we were talking about, is like what is scientific collaboration? And maybe like we could each go around and if you're comfortable, each contribute to this, because maybe we all have our different ideas. But I think that a lot of times what we have more often than true collaboration, like working on this study before it becomes publicly available, oftentimes what I think we have is more like borrowing ideas from other fields or borrowing like technology or methods that someone in another field developed. And then it's like applying some engineering idea or something. But I think that that's more common than like a in-person collaboration. Like you come up with the idea together, maybe even, and then you have these two very different people collaborating the whole way. But I don't know, what do other people think about that?
I can say something.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's what I think about too, where sometimes with collaboration, it just ends up where you are talking with somebody else to get information on how to go about doing something, versus like pairing up with someone in a whole other field to do a whole project. And that's because it takes a lot of relationships, like a lot of strength in relationships, to find other people who are on the same page as you and looking at a similar thing, but someone who's in a different field. And if I can give an example of this.
Please.
One concrete example is where I work at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, Department of Entomology. We have this big library of orthoptera sounds. So I think it's mostly cricket and katydid sounds that have been recorded. I think they're on cassette tapes or something like that. And right now we submitted a grant to get those digitized so that they're in a computer form and not just on those cassettes.
And like there's like a stack of cassettes in a drawer somewhere
like
in the museum.
Room, a closet full of it up in Philadelphia at the Academy of Natural Sciences. And one thing, like my coworkers, my coworker could have just like gone and like found a way to do this, but luckily he got in touch with the acoustics lab at Drexel University. Oh, are we back?
I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So luckily we got in touch with the acoustics lab at Drexel University, and talking with this audio engineer has been really wonderful because he knows so much about sound frequencies and ranges, and having him as a guide or as a collaborator in digitizing these recordings of the grasshoppers, crickets, and katydids is like, we're so lucky to have him because he's aware of what technology we need, where we're not going to get sound clipping of frequencies that we can't hear with the human ear. Because there might be some things on those recordings that we can't hear, but the software and technology is able to extract that and recognize it. So without his assistance and without this collaboration, like, there potentially we could have lost a lot of information. So it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And good to have that connection.
So this is another theme, perhaps, is sometimes collaboration happens because you're both inspired from the beginning, and then maybe more often it happens just out of necessity because you want to work on something or you have a goal, and then you're like, oh, wait, I actually don't know how to do this. And then you approach someone else with your vision or your dream.
Yeah. And so in this case, the person who works, the audio engineer, is on the same grant. They all collaborated from the very start on the grant to make sure what's needed to do this the right way is in that package.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Abyss is here. So I'm going to go ahead and put him on the spot. Abyss, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure, Georgia. So I'm Abyss. I'm basically an engineer who's been really fascinated about science, and yeah, this seems like a very interesting topic about scientific collaboration because lots of scientific achievements are basically accomplished when there is seamless collaboration. I guess like we can delve into the details, but yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could sort of maybe expand on what we call collaboration, perhaps even like, so a lot of discoveries in science also happen when someone switches fields, right? When you decide, oh, instead of an engineer, I'm going to become a biologist or get into biology for a little bit. And in a way, we could think of that as a collaboration. It's a collaboration between your new and your past selves who are bringing together this really cool different sets of information.
And that can be really powerful. Oh, go ahead. It can be really powerful. Oh, go ahead, Christian.
Okay, I'll give you some examples out of my modest life. I did where I was able to do that. I was actually always fascinated by travel, and to travel to different countries and cultures motivated me a lot to look for collaborations, and that's also how I changed my field very often. Originally, when I did my PhD, I was looking at a very specific topic for solar energy, actually. So what we had there is we had very fine particles, and this actually, these type of experiments still exist. It's called a solar thermal absorber. Sunlight is concentrated onto a cloud of particles and absorbed, and through heat exchangers, you can then basically gain the heat from the sun, as opposed to very often with solar cells where we transform solar energy directly into electricity. It is quite an efficient way of doing it, and it's still being researched. And as I was doing that research, I found out, because I was looking at the optical light scattering and the absorption of solar energy or solar radiation, I should say, in the cloud, I came across actually the astrophysicists, especially in Helsinki. I came across a group of scientists who were looking at asteroid light scattering, and I found out that their problems are absolutely similar to what I was doing. And I thought, well, this is a wonderful adventure to spend a bit of time in Finland. And I actually did. I had a wonderful time in Finland, collaborating with these guys, and I learned so much about the next field, fields and things I never even knew existed. And that's how my interest in astronomy went along. And then I changed my field so many times. I did fuel cells. We did high temperature fuel cell research, then wind energy design, and then I started helping design transformers and substations and many other things. And only in 2016 I decided to quit my job and go right back into physics and science where I originally came from, and to really devote my time also more into education and just discovering the beautiful world we have around us. And this is exactly where I'm back into this wonderful pool of all these young upcoming scientists and women like you that are looking into the wonderful world that we have around us. And there's so much to discover, and it is an endless story that is just full of curiosity. And so I'm actually working together with biologists now because I'm learning so much from them. And sometimes I can contribute with my with my bit of wisdom that I got throughout the years. That's it.
Yeah, it sounds like you did a real tour. Can you give us an example, maybe like a concrete example that's easy to understand, like a bit of wisdom that you wouldn't have had without this like switching?
Oh my goodness, bit of wisdom. It's Georgia. It's really, the only wisdom I have that comes back again and again is just to be humble and just to observe, open your eyes and look for patterns. I've been looking for patterns all my life, and I find these patterns in biology. I find them in physics, and everywhere you find certain patterns. I'm fascinated by patterns, whether they're by light. Isa was talking about sound. You have bats. Everything has patterns. They have beautiful patterns, and if you can find certain patterns, and you can draw so many analogies all the way down to the fractal level or whatever. That is really what puts all of the different sciences together, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Isa, did you still want to say your thing that you were going to say, or do you still remember?
I don't remember.
Gone. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like, you talk about patterns, and like one thing is different. A good thing about switching fields is different fields sort of develop different things that they're focused on at a sort of really basic level, how they think about things. So are they interested in patterns? Or like sometimes, in some subfields, they become obsessed with, or not obsessed, but they become more focused on like, well, identifying the pattern doesn't mean anything. We're more interested in understanding why the pattern exists, or the mechanisms causing it, the underlying sort of like causative agents. But I mean, often it's easier said than done in that case. If you haven't fully sort of evaluated the pattern, then you don't know which ones are sort of the most outstanding ones to focus on, or something like that. So maybe that's another good reason for switching fields.
And I find also the field that Abyss is incredibly interesting. If I can draw a parallel to that, I was lucky in 2011. I went to I saw the World Chess Championship, because we were talking about artificial intelligence last time, and I'm fascinated by chess too. And I actually met one person called Ken Thompson, and he was the father of the chess algorithms from IBM originally, and it is so interesting to listen to these people. And at that time, so I just want to draw to that. Maybe I'm deviating a little bit because that Ian brought that topic up last time, and it suddenly occurred to me that when we were talking about the development of artificial intelligence, I know that Ken Thompson said that time, and that guy is super smart. He said he said to me that I don't think they're going to crack Go in the next 10 to 20 years. And lo and behold, a few years later, they cracked that program. They cracked Go, which is absolutely insane. And then shortly after that, they were able to devise an algorithm, an AI algorithm for a chess program, so that it would completely teach itself. And that shows, we are in a very fascinating time at the moment. These are tools I never had. And Abyss was last time talking about image recognition and other patterns. And that's actually what we're working now also in astronomy, with all kinds of pattern recognitions for faster searches, so that your telescopes can home in much faster and so on. So it's just amazing how the fields are exploding, and these are all examples of cross culture, cross interdisciplinary collaborations that I'm coming across all the time. I don't know if Abyss wants to comment on that. So.
Sure. I mean, you're right. I'm actually like sort of like engaged in the whole research of AI. It's pretty much a nascent research, topic of mine. But I've also done so many research on biomedical optics, where we used equations from scattering effects of stellar objects to essentially model the human, like how the human body actually scatters and absorbs light. And also, I think like that, I was kind of focusing on that when you were talking about, the sort of the multidisciplinary approach towards to your study about optics, that it kind of permeates into the biomedical field as well, more than you think, because some of the imaging techniques that we use, um, I still consider myself to be a biomedical engineer, even though I'm trying to delve into data science. But some of the imaging techniques that are used heavily rely on those concepts, which are generalized for, like I said, astrophysics, and anything that requires optics in general. And if you consider also multimodal type of imaging, like for example, integrating light with ultrasound, which is now being, sort of like the hot topic of research into developing a very at least like the ability for light to penetrate deeper structures, or be able to sort of like obtain imaging at a deeper level. You see that, you kind of go back to the basics. Right, you just go back to like the drawing board and trying to do all sorts of calculations and simulations, and eventually I mean, that actually goes to show that we are sort of like rooting back to the science of optics and how sound transfers in the body. So yeah, it's really interesting that we're having so many collaborations. And also, I want to comment on the AI aspect that you just mentioned. It's making its roots into like health policy, and like you just mentioned, that there's also astrophysics application is in there as well. Um, so yeah, I'm really curious to see where this thing is going to go, because we're at the junction point where we have sort of like this universal tool, I would like to call it, although like I would I would say that with a certain modesty. But we're at this junction point, we can apply the AI techniques that have been solely utilized by computer scientists into different aspects of aiding scientific achievement. So yeah, I would say that I would probably look forward to these kind of innovations in the future, because like as human beings, we can only detect so much limited amount of patterns, but with the help of an AI, we can probably do more.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like that type of technology is being used in so many different fields now, and it's really cool. I don't use it much, but I've heard of people doing stuff with that, like archaeologists and like looking beneath the surface for stuff. I'm guessing that's related to that. Kind of on the other end, that reminds me of like actually a recent collaboration I had with people who study these wasps that are able to recognize faces. So this is the other end, because much simpler facial, like a much simpler image recognition system. But the lab that there's this group of researchers who they really focus on these wasps that are the wasps have like different patterns on their face. So each like individual wasp has like sort of different like dark spots and things like that. And the wasps are able to remember each other and recognize each other by their faces. And this helps them, I guess, presumably because they establish some sort of like dominant system. So like they fight and then they remember like, you beat me. And so now like I'm like in your group. They're kind of establishing like this small group of wasps each summer. But the big question is, how do the wasps recognize faces? They have like, I don't know, like 3 neurons, or I don't know, but they have very simple brains. And they pitch this as how has nature, how has biology figured out how to do like image recognition and pattern recognition. And so, I mean, I was really excited to get to work with these animal behavior wasp people. They brought me in as like a genetics person, and they wanted to know like how sort of genetically different is like what like they wanted to try to find like what are the genes underlying the ability to recognize faces versus not in wasps. And it's a little bit of an example of medium success collaboration, because even though we were kind of working together from the beginning, I think that if you're not familiar with a different field, so if you're not very familiar with genetics and you say like, oh, we want to figure out what's different about these wasps, it wasn't really clear if they want like the gene that makes the neuron different so you can recognize faces, or if they just wanted to know like how different the group of wasps that can recognize faces is in general from other wasps. So like from the genetic sampling wasn't set up that well from the beginning, basically. And so I don't want to go into too many details, but we randomly looked at like 1% of the wasp's DNA. And we thought it was really cool because within the same species, the populations that we have in Michigan of this wasp, they can recognize faces. But for the same species, down in Pennsylvania, those wasps of the same species cannot recognize faces. They won't remember the wasp that beat them, and also their faces all look very similar. They just kind of have dark faces. So we showed that genetically, these are all one species.
Are these subspecies then? Or sorry, if you say there's one, I'm just curious. If you say there's one,
so we found that there is a little bit of differentiation. Yeah, so these are small wasps. They don't move around very much. So we were able to use the genetics to see like, oh yeah, there's kind of like population level differentiation. So like what we would expect, just given that they're kind of geographically separated, but because the genetic objectives weren't very clearly laid out from the beginning, we didn't have the genetic resolution to say, but this is the gene that causes it. So,
Fun fact that I want to throw in here is that the species of wasp, or the group of wasps that this lab studies, are the same that were featured on the bug scope yesterday afternoon.
Polistes
scatus. Yep. So, little fun fact: those ones are able to recognize faces.
and does one know similar things with bees actually?
Not sure.
I think it's more pheromones with bees, maybe, or it's more just like.
Yeah. One thing I can say, one major biological difference between bumblebees, for example, which are colonial, and then these wasps, are that these wasps have open-faced nests, so that's getting into where the nest is, which allows them to see each other more easily than with bumblebees, which nest in cavities. So it's probably darker in there. So
yeah, and also with bees, you sort of have a difference where like the queen physically looks way different than all the workers. And
yeah, I was just wondering, Georgia, because it's well known that bees have they can see polarized light, and they orientate themselves with polarized light, which I find absolutely fascinating. And they also seem to have quite good visual memory. So I was just wondering. That's
it's interesting. Lots of animals that rely on flowers for food, or fruit or colorful thing, have really good spatial awareness. Like they're like, I remember where the good patch of flowers is, or I remember where the fruit tree I like is, and they have really good vision. Like fruit species of bats that eat fruit in the tropics, they have actually quite good color vision. Yeah.
Wow.
Do they communicate with each other about where the fruit is? Or not
It's
really?
not nearly as well
Transmitting.
studied as in bees. They're certainly not doing like these
Dances?
dances and stuff. Probably like I think that they probably teach like their baby or their offspring or something where the food is, but
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think that they're like signaling to all the other bats where the food is.
Okay, cool.
So I'm curious though, is there difference in their compound eyes, especially among those who can recognize faces and those that could not, or like the species that actually recognize faces and not?
Uh,
Unknown, I think. I don't think so. Like, I know that there's a couple of groups of people that really focus on these wasps, but they're mostly people who study animal behavior. So they're really good at like, keeping the wasps in captivity and doing little trials and like showing wasps pictures of other wasps and then shocking them when they see the picture of the bad wasp, and like these like kind of like Pavlovian training of wasps to really get at like behavior. Yeah, but I don't know that there's people who are really like into like anatomy and physiology studying this who have looked at it. Yeah.
hopefully you guys got that because we realized the internet
Yeah.
went out a little bit.
So when you say recognize faces, you're talking about other wasp faces, not like as opposed to our faces, or
Yeah, they can recognize other wasp faces. I don't know if anyone has tried to teach them human faces yet. The woman who found this out for the first time, the head of the lab, she, as a PhD student, she looked at the wasps and she was like, oh, their faces are all different. I wonder if it's like pheromones or what. And she actually used nail polish or some little paint to like paint their faces to have a different pattern on it so that they look like a stranger to the other wasps. And then like all the other wasps attacked it. They were like, who are you?
oh,
Yeah.
really?
Wow.
So putting glasses on a wasp would really make it like a perfect disguise. It would actually work.
Yeah.
So that gives the next question: is there such a thing as an albino or leucistic wasp? They'd be doomed.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or they'd have an advantage because they're really distinctive looking, and all the other wasps.
Yeah.
Would-
I guess the question is, when does the imprinting happen right when it's born? Yeah, because maybe when it's born, the other ones will see that it came out of the nest. So, yeah, no incognito wasps allowed. No disguises.
So, I guess this maybe is a good segue into like another thing we were talking about, which is like, do people here have any dream collaborations? Like, you've always wanted to consult like an engineer or a biomedical person on this, but like you don't know anyone. Yeah, what dream collaboration ideas do people have?
Yes, I can start. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very interesting current example here in British Columbia. It's actually quite a severe example of a dispute between, or should I say, people who support wildlife and the mining industry, and it's in British Columbia. And what has happened there is there's a mining quarry. Okay, it's also the territory where there's as you probably know, peregrine falcons are becoming more and more rare. You find them a lot in cities, but here in British Columbia, we're finding them just getting, unfortunately, less and less in population. And there's a very well studied peregrine falcon nest, and that just happens to be at a site that took up mining again. In this case, it's gravel mining in a quarry. And what happened was something really unfortunate there. So initially, and that's my understanding, when they started mining, they did a mitigation for the peregrine falcon nest to go somewhere else. But unfortunately, these peregrine falcons decided to then reestablish their nest where it always has been and where the mining site is now, where they do blasting and so on. So they just laid their eggs just after they got their permit there. So you can see how complex the situation is. So now, of course, the mining is going on. In the meantime, the the mama peregrine falcon has later clutches. We don't know how many eggs there are, but we do know that the approximate hatching date is around the 15th of June, and in the meantime, the mining industry is going on with their blasts. Now, the interaction between the exploration of mining and birds is not very well understood, unfortunately. I went into literature and searched as much as I could, and I came only across a certain parallel of a prairie falcon, which lays eggs on sandstone. I just have to explain that falcons or peregrine falcons are very different. They lay their eggs directly on the rock, which is unusual, right? You don't have that in a lot of other raptors. You don't have that the case. But because of that, if you have if the mine conducts certain scheduled blasts, the ramifications are quite severe, because you have to imagine you put these explosives into the rock, and the shock waves through granite, that's it, the main rock there is granite, are tremendous. So you get the shock wave, the propagation of the shock wave going right through the granite. And then you have, of course, the egg, which is quite hard, in contact with the rock, and the propagation, even if it's only a point going through the eggshell, through the yolk, and that may even cause some mixing, which of course is bad. You shouldn't shake the eggs or disturb them. They have to be held at a constant temperature and so on. That's also why the raptors or the birds are so protective of the eggs, because the temperature regulation and the shocks and so on, and also the protection of predators are really important. So coming back to my point here is that the Fish and Wildlife recommended a 50 meter, so 50 meters, a bit more than, it's between 150 and 200 feet, a distance between the explosives and the egg, which we believe is ludicrous, because the shockwave propagation over 50 meters is crazy. And if you look into the literature, which I just mentioned on the prairie falcon, we found out that the suggested safe blasting distance on sandstone should be at least 250, if not 500 meters, if you don't know what you're going on. So that's a factor of 10. So my worry is that on the 15th of June or somewhere around there, we will not see any hatching, right? So what I'm actually looking at, so why I'm, the long story short now, what I'm actually trying to find, and it's not so easy, because I'm not an expert in these explosive. If there's anybody in the audience, anyone who knows how to do at least a rough calculation of what the impact of such a shock wave on an egg could be, just even an order of magnitude would help. So that's an example for an urgent, from my point of view, for an urgent point. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, like somebody definitely knows how to do that, and it's easy for them probably. We just need to find
How do
them.
you connect with them? Yeah, maybe
It's like
tagging Audubon Society on Twitter.
No, but you need like a seismologist or something. You need an office.
Yeah.
You
Well,
need.
If you get the people who care about it, the bird people, to magnify the question, someone hopefully will know someone who is in the field.
That's
who
true.
who can answer the question.
Yeah.
I will retweet your tweet if you make one.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you. I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
The bird people are very connected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a strong community, the ornithology community across the U.S. and the world, for that matter.
So, quick question, Christian. So, which one is like really more impactful? Because from where I can, at least from your brief description of the problem, it would appear that the sound waves that actually travel through the ground could have more detrimental effect as opposed to those who are, I mean, like, the air blast wave. So, just like, do you think, like, there's a comparison between the two? Like, which one do you think is more detrimental to the hatchlings and the eggs? And
Yeah, this is a great point. There is the problem that you have from the air is not, maybe in my opinion, and I'm not an expert, please. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected, but in my opinion, the air, of course, because it's a compressible fluid, basically, it's a compressible, it's compressible. The attenuation of a shock wave will be much more severe there. However, the problem is at the same time you get all these what are they called? These flying rocks, right? From the explosion flying around, and they are also very dangerous. Those are missiles flying around, and we often see, it's very difficult to see also what impact stress has on the bird. But coming back to your point, I'm just looking at the shock wave. I'll give you an example. The biologist who's responsible or not responsible, who's trying to protect the site there and putting a lot of energy. His name is Howard Bailey. I have great respect for him. He showed me a photograph there of of a small lake nearby the quarry, and there were 10 to 20,000 fish that were dead in there, dead. And it's not a joke. He took a picture. It was absolutely horrifying, and that shows you the impact from a shockwave. So what happened in that case, as far as I understand, is the shockwave went through the granite straight into the water, and that has hardly any resistance and killed 10 to 20,000 fish in one go. So is it serious? Absolutely.
That's astonishing. I would not ever guess that would happen in the water.
Yeah, that's the saying, like shooting fish in a barrel is easy. It's hard to hit it, but actually just the impact of the bullet going through the water, I think, will kill the fish. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's why you don't fish using explosives.
Right.
Because water is basically acting like an incompressible fluid. So basically, the shock wave is just gonna tear their viscera inside out, and that will cause more and more death.
Never thought of that before.
Yeah. Well, gosh, now that makes me think of another sad. I think that there's a lot of, I often hear I guess I sort of surveyed people before asking about like what fields are inherently interdisciplinary, but conservation, I think, is one of the biggest ones. Because as conservation biologists, I guess is who I interact with, but conservation biologists are so goal focused that it kind of forces you to reach out and collaborate. You find yourself in these situations where you have a very specific problem that you want to address, and you can't get around it by just saying like, I'm just going to research something I know better, or like that I'm more of an expert in, because you won't be able to address the problem that's been presented to you then.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, conservation should be on all our minds. It's the most important topic we have now, really, or one of the most important topics, for sure.
Peter says that's what's leading to the extinction of the Irrawaddy river dolphins. I don't know of that. What's like blasting or something going on nearby, or mining operations?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, tell us.
To know. Yeah, I guess I'll say too that what's sort of led me, so I love entomology, and if I could spend all my time just like following around golden tortoise beagles or some other insect, like I would love to do that. But then, but what's moved me more towards the field of communication. This is why I did a master's in communication with the for a moment. What's led me to do a master's in communication with a concentration in public communication is just that motivation to help with conservation and sustainability of our planet, because we need collaboration between entomologists and scientists who are on the ground seeing how these organisms are affected. We need them to connect with communicators to get the messages out.
Oops, I think we lost you.
Oops. They're back.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So
We need
we
conservationists
need-
to connect with communicators.
Yeah, we need biologists, entomologists to connect with people who are trained in communication to make sure we can get the right messages out in the most effective way that can compete with all the other messages that are being sent out into the world from companies and like all the different organizations. We need to boost the PR. So that's part of what has motivated me to go the pathway that I have. And yeah, still navigating it, but but I built a really wonderful network of entomologists along the way that has been great, and that now I can call upon when someone in the journalism or communication field is looking for someone on a certain topic. Darn, connection. I don't know what's up with our connection today. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. Are there any other examples maybe that anybody else wants to bring up? David, do you have any examples? Do you want to bring up any?
Collaboration.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of things, from my past, and I just now realized something more modern here. There should have been a collaboration, and there wasn't. Now there sort of is. SpaceX, Starlink satellites, and the astronomical community, because all those Starlink satellites are going to be tens of thousands of them, are going to affect the night sky, especially the deep sky surveys that take pictures. And of course, the satellites are just passing through, and there'll be these big streak lines and all that. We've had to deal with this to some extent for a number of years, but it's just going to really increase. Now, there's been a little more collaboration because the astronomy community have put their concerns out to Elon Musk, and they are trying to make a darker version of the satellite, basically something that doesn't reflect as much. And that will help certainly, and it may actually help at least us visual observers, because they'll make it dark enough where you can't see them streaking across the sky, which is kind of fun to see, but once in a while. But that does kind of ruin your night sky. But it's definitely an issue. I mean, you have to kind of plan your observations around these passing satellites, and they're covering a much larger range of latitudes as well, as opposed to some other satellites. So. But that was never communicated initially, but now at least SpaceX is at least, I think, trying their best to help out to make a better, darker satellite that doesn't reflect as much, at least in the optical. Of course, in the infrared and stuff like that, it's tougher, because you get to a point where you have something as black as this that's going to emit thermal radiation. You can't help it because it's got a temperature. There's nothing you can do about that. So that can affect other wavelengths. And there's not much you can mitigate about that.
Yeah, I guess, David, when you talk about the impact of Starlink on observations, of course the altitude is fairly low, which is fortunate. At the same time, they come like swarms of satellites now. So I would presume that mainly impacts maybe observations of in the early evening or
Yes.
or early morning comets.
Yes.
and typical.
That is the primary time. Yeah, exactly. When the sun's reflection is the most. But like I said, if they're going to emit thermally, it doesn't matter what time it is, right? They're going to just be.
Yes.
Even if they get kind of cold, though being in the shadow here is, going to help, I guess, cool them down. But like I said, now at least there's a little bit now being more aware. I mean, they got these out, but now they're at least communication. There's something to be done. It's probably not going to be good enough in the end. They're going to be, again, dark enough to not be seen with the eye, but it's clearly not dark enough where they're going to be seen in these big survey telescopes. It's across the sky.
It's quite a dilemma, because on the one hand you have this exactly what you mentioned. You have the destruction or the disturbance of the clarity of the night sky, and on the other hand we have this great communication.
Right.
Because what we are doing now, because Starlink, well, goodness me, I mean, I will be able to go into the wild anywhere and broadcast from there. So we have this dilemma.
Right. And you get to the point, is the internet one of those things everybody should have, like drinking water and so forth? And if that's your philosophy, then this makes sense. You're getting to places that cannot get internet. People out in the country and all that, they can't get high-speed internet, low latency internet. So I understand. It's it's kind of like building a bunch of a network of electricity poles and all that in the country and all that. I mean, because everybody now should have electricity as well, right? And we kind of accepted that. So that's the thing.
And if I could insert maybe a toy example, like
Yeah.
I know some ornithologists have put super like low orbit satellites into orbit. That way they can put smaller GPS trackers on the birds, GPS trackers that are lightweight enough that they don't have to communicate with the satellite very far away. But,
Yeah.
you know, I bet, for example, you know, a lot of birds migrate at night. And they use the stars to navigate. Like maybe they don't like this satellite that's being used to study them. I mean, I don't think wildlife biologists, you know, we're not putting up that many satellites, but
That's interesting.
You know, trade-offs.
Because they've had to deal with moving targets, at least fewer than like airplanes for a while. I think that maybe they realize that a moving target, they may have a way of looking at star patterns, just like we can. Okay, we know those are moving targets; those are stars. So we know those are the ones we want to navigate, if you will, with. So I don't know. Maybe they're getting used to it or something, or getting to a point where they can figure it out. But I don't know. Have to ask the birds again. We need that communication with animals. You know.
Yeah,
It's fascinating.
There's studies, right, where birds were raised in planetariums where the stars were shifted. Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah, Christian tell us. There must have been some sort of collaboration there.
Collaboration, yeah. Can I borrow a planetarium so I can see it?
Yeah, I know, Georgia. Many years ago, I saw a movie on that. I found it absolutely fascinating. The way that birds can orientate themselves by stars is absolutely incredible. They did so many studies. Also, of course, the magnetic impact, right, of the magnetic field of the Earth.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But just coming back to the tracking, I find that also fascinating how that's developing, because you were just mentioning it. We are, of course, trying to put, or not me, but David Hancock, an eagle biologist, is trying to put a lot of trackers on eagles to understand their migration behavior much better, because so much is not understood, right? And they're trying to put that on a lot of birds, and up to now, the costs have been absolutely prohibitive, right? But now, because of these low, as you say, these low flying satellites and so on, the costs are coming down. And before, you had to, had to pay terrible cell phone bills, in order to keep the link up, right? And that's all. The costs are coming down now, and that's a good thing to see. So that's the positive side.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe we could we don't have that much longer, but maybe I'll invite Deanna on if she wants to come. But also we could all go around and say what fields we think are maybe more skewed towards being interdisciplinary. We talked a lot about conservation biology by necessity, but what other fields do people think?
Oh, astrobiology. Astrobiology is one I can think of.
Why? What is interdisciplinary about it?
Well, of course, the biology parts. I mean, you want to know what life is, defining life, what life could be. Astronomy, of course, provides these scenarios, right? We find these conditions. Okay, we've got water on Mars. That's been known for a while. We got water on Enceladus, water underneath Titan, water on Europa, all having energy and so forth. Does that then allow us to think that now life could exist in many different scenarios, extremophils and so forth? As long as you have water and energy and nutrients, is that all you need to get life going on? And that opens up the possibilities not only for our own solar system, but also then, of course, solar systems beyond us. So it makes it a lot easier. So you kind of want to coordinate between your knowledge of biology, what life can do, what life can survive, what life can't survive, and what we have, at least initially, from our solar system. So that's a field that's really grown. What's a likely possibility? You can start making arguments. If you get too cold, then life can't survive. Plants just basically break apart under cold temperatures, and so forth. And then, of course, you're thinking, well, we may have to think beyond what the Earth has. What could exist, what life could exist, and all that. So, my colleague teaches an astrobiology course. He's got both fields. He's both got degrees in biology and astronomy. So, perfect guy for that class.
So I have sort of like a very wild idea that is probably going to be multidisciplinary. So one of the things that I actually studied as a grad student was the sort of like the ability to decode a neural input, continuous neural input from, say, a neural implant, like pretty much like what Neuralink is trying to do. So I'm really fascinated as to where like the brain computer interface right now is going, because there are academic collaborations like the Brain Gate, and also there are private companies that are taking interest in in brain computer interface like Neuralink. But moreover, I'm more interested in brain, like in neural prosthesis. So it got me thinking, because if you look at the uh, abductor and flexor muscles in insects, right? The way they operate is that they have they don't have as much oxygenation as the mammalian blood. If I'm not mistaken, you can correct me on that, because I don't know if hemolymph is able to trap so much oxygen, and yet it's able to sustain, or at least like keep the insect at at a level, right? So my perhaps like we can probably translate that to using that into neural prosthesis in a way, instead of using robotic tools to sort of like augment the ability to grasp, at least like among individuals that have completely lost their limbs. We can probably genetically engineer these kind of fine and twitchy muscles that you get in insects into like I mean, in a way that they don't cause like this um, like you don't have genetic mismatch. Like you can technically edit the genes of that type of muscle and implement that into a more organic kind of prosthesis, as opposed to like this clunky metallic prosthesis that requires a constant um, supply of energy. And I think like one of okay, yeah, I bet like Georgia and Isa are not here, but um, so one of the proof of concept, if not proof of concept, but actually one of the methods that actually worked, is that it one of my former professors at University of Michigan, I guess, where Georgia is in right now, developed this method that actually uses the muscle tissue from the host, and they grafted that on the neurons that are being severed because of loss of limb. What they found out is that these grafted muscles amplify the signal a thousand fold. So in a way, if you have sort of like a prosthesis, that you can essentially get a readout of different muscle coordination by simply grafting muscles on that. And it got me thinking, like, if we can just seamlessly integrate that sort of like neural prosthesis aspect with what we see in the in the insect world, where they have very very sturdy, and yet they can operate on oxygen deprived environment, so that they can be readily used, and you don't have to worry about recharging them, because they rely on glucose to operate. So yeah, it's just got me thinking. But I guess that would have been a great collaborative idea. I'll probably say that again if Georgia and Isa are going to come back.
Yeah, thanks, Abyss. That's a great comment. Really very interesting. I never thought about that. And I think maybe Ian, who isn't here either, could probably comment on this. But unfortunately, I think Georgia and Isa have just disappeared into a black hole. So,
The black hole, exactly.
so they left us on our own now. Oh dear.
Okay. Isa just is pushing. Oh wait. Okay, forget George's account. We're now going into her account. There we go.
You have to turn on your volume.
We're so
Very,
Should probably gracefully exit your own, George's. Take yours out.
Yeah.
we
Got it.
were missing you.
There we go.
Yeah. So we could hear you guys for the most part,
Okay.
for some reason.
Mostly.
Okay.
But yeah, that does sound really interesting. I mean, really who I want to collaborate with right now is some sort of internet maintenance person. That would be a great collaboration.
Someone connect us to that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that it might be time. It's been an hour. It might be time to sign off. And so thank you so much, everybody, for joining and for helping us and stuff work through these internet issues. And it was so cool to talk to all of you about collaboration ideas. I'm so inspired now.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Georgia and Isa.
Here you go. There you go.
Well done.
Down there.
Oh,
Well done.
thank you, David. Very appropriate.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Didn't even know that existed, but it's a good one. Yeah.
Poor 30-year-old millennials. We have no money. All right. Thank you. I know. I feel like I have to go back and watch the broadcast now to see all the stuff that I missed.
Yeah. We have to see what exactly came through from what we said.
Yeah, that too. All right, thank you.
What's so cool now is, Georgia, you're the host, but you're not on, right? You're not actually on right now.
I've delegated. I'm one of those people. I say I want to collaborate, and then I just delegate to the other collaborators. Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Thank you,
great.
everybody, so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.